New Voodoo Live.
Welcome back, everyone. I am Mike O'Connor, EVP of Marketing Strategy of New Voodoo, joined today with President and founder of New Voodoo, Carolyn Gilbert, and our EVP of Research Analysis, Lee Jacobs. Good to see you guys today. A lot of data to share. Podcasting is our topic of the day. New study data. And I was really I was really pleased by what I saw in that podcasting I've long thought of as the thing you fall asleep to, the thing you do the dishes to, the thing you walk the dog to. But I hadn't really considered its emergence as sort of a commuting phenomenon. But the data here is pretty definitive, and we're going to get to that. But I think I owe it to you to let the experts kind of share our methodology and how we got to the conclusions we're about to share with you today. So Carolyn, I know you're the one who gives away all this stuff to the industry. Maybe you can get into a little bit about how we do what we do.
Yeah, twice a year, in a very self-serving way, we field a massive audio study. This year, it was the beginning of the year in January, over 5,300 respondents nationwide, geographically balanced, weighted for gender, age, and ethnicity. And it's not just the continental U.S. We have Alaska and Hawaii in there too. U.S., 50 states are represented in this particular study. And we do this so that, first of all, we know the lay of the land. We use this research to develop our marketing products and our digital products so that we know where people are, what they're using, and how they're using media in general so that we can reach them effectively. But we also do it so that we can help make our clients smarter.
Yeah, we give this stuff away, whether you're a client or not. We're glad to share our data. We use these New Voodoo Lives. We do webinars. We do lots of one-on-ones. And Lee, I think one of the things that I like about this particular study is the massive sample, over 5,000 NTAB, which means we got a really good snapshot of the commuting world, the working world, because that's been a moving target. I know I've gotten tons of calls from prospects and clients wanting to put more media weight into digital outdoor combined with digital audio, for example, as one sort of combo platter. And I think this at-work data kind of tells me that we're back.
We certainly are, Mike. It does still vary around the country. There are places where, you could drill down and find, there are more people still deployed mostly or exclusively from home. And there are places where it's almost entirely, it's only a teeny little handful who are still at home, almost everybody. But as a national number, you're talking about 4 in 5 who are mostly or exclusively working outside the home. And that's great for all sorts of audio media, because if you're in transit, unless you're one of those people on a bus or a train who has earbuds and can keep their attention on a little small screen while they're riding along, chances are you're listening to audio. It's going to correlate with a boost in the amount of time spent listening.
And these new next two slides. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carolyn.
No, anecdotally, I found that people who even now have the option of working at home where they didn't before prefer to go in the office most days, just because I think people have missed the socialization. So even with that option, people are going to the office more and more.
Yeah, and that coupled with the fact that we've got such a big sample size behind this, is we were able to measure more different locations and more different ways of consuming audio media at different times of the day. We're going to show you 2 slides. Explain this one. Obviously, not everybody uses audio media at the same time, so this would be kind of the overall usage, and then we'll show you a slide of the competitive shares of the top 3 primary audio verticals.
Well, we slated these as situations, so we're going through someone's day and imagining the morning at home, morning while they're commuting, workday outside or workday from home, late afternoon commuting, evening at home, weekends at home, or weekends out and about. And I guess the stunning thing there is just how much podcasts manage to get their way into people's lives. To your point earlier, Mike, it's not just people falling asleep or while they're out doing exercises or while they're cleaning up the kitchen. It's really pervading through people's lives.
Look at that share of morning drive, Carolyn, for example. That was a shocker to me.
Yeah, I mean, you look at how well podcasting does, but again, when you think about the daily commute, podcasting was really made for that. I remember when we did a bunch of interviews, we talked to people and what was the optimum length of a podcast? Exactly the length of time it took them to get to work.
I just advanced the slide so we could look at the kind of the share of voice that the top three main audio verticals have. And as you mentioned, morning drive it's a bloodbath when you look at that compared to digital streaming providers. And hey, listen, radio is the champion of drive time, but podcasts have kind of wormed their way into the first position here. But it's not just morning drive; it's throughout the day, home or out of home.
Right. I mean, you look at the places where radio AM FM kind of dies, and both DSP and podcasting jump right up there. And we can probably attach that a little bit to the smart speaker, which has brought audio back home. Radio, as radio FM AM, was moving just to the car. You know, how many radios can you find at Best Buy? But here with the smart speaker, even though you can get AM and FM on the smart speaker, you see podcasts and DSPs rising to the top.
And it's worth mentioning that, smart speakers are a category unto themselves. But frankly, in 2023, we've seen that the bigger category now is a Bluetooth speaker. I mean, I used to think about it in context of, I'd have people, tradespeople here at the house doing work, fixing a window or whatever. And you become accustomed to the paint spattered boombox sitting outside blasting some radio station. And the past couple of years, that's transitioned to a paint spattered Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah.
And now, we had one crew here recently where they're listening to podcasts through the day, not music at all.
Wow.
Well, and time spent listening has been a factor. And again, in-home TSL has been the strongest, but look what's happened here now in the last 6 months. We're now seeing the bulk of time spent listening for podcasts, at least among the 3,700-ish in our sample that are working for a living, most adults, TSL lift from outside the home.
Absolutely.
Right. And you get a bigger lift among those who are working mostly outside the home. It adds in that extra layer that they got to take some time to get there and they have nothing else to do. You see a little teeny bump among those who are working mostly from home. I envy the people who can listen to spoken word while they're working. I'm not one of those souls. But if you are one of those people, it's a great, great companion.
So I was a little surprised by the next finding because I was expecting bigger things from podcasting. But the fact is that when we look at the most sophisticated audio infotainment systems, something I think we refer to as the connected car, and we should differentiate the different types of audio categories that we've tested. And why doesn't podcasting do better when you strip away radio's advantage as basically it's had the exclusive monopoly over TuneIn, and we've moved to more of a screen with apps on it? I just would have thought that, like the Pandora Spotify audio streaming lift that we're seeing in these most fancy connected vehicles, that we would have gotten the same thing out of podcasts.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the various apps. There's not one place where you find podcasts. You've got the purple thing, and you've got Spotify, and you've got Stitcher, and where is that other one that I listen to? And very much, like the TV, we got Netflix. Where is that show? There's no consolidated place there where you can just, and you need to say it because you're driving the car. Where can I find Sharpless or whatever? That's what it's called, right?
Smartless. And it's just a matter of additional friction that people are, it's friction. They're resistant to it. We're all accustomed to the, what's described here as the traditional vehicle radio, two knobs, some readout in the middle with, presets for radio stations. We all know how that works, and you can do it really easily while you're driving. Connected vehicle, and admittedly, we've talked about this before, we do our best to describe the difference between a cord Bluetooth vehicle or a fully connected vehicle. But we go hammer and tongs trying to get people to understand what we mean. And I think they get it most of the time. And the 14% does kind of correlate with what we're seeing in terms of the reduction in new car purchases. But it's just not easy to navigate listening to podcasts in a moving vehicle, even if it's one of the connected ones.
Carolyn, how big
Mike,
a segment is the connected?
I'm sorry, Mike. I have a connected car, and I can press a little button on my steering wheel and say, tune to channel 17 or 91.7. I can say those things. There is no way I can say, play that podcast anywhere in my car. And I think that makes all the difference. And
I have to admit, I yell at Alexa a ton to get the right podcast.
Yeah.
And try doing it with John Heilman's podcast. Now, I think he's given up on it, but it's really impossible. I feel like I'm reading Shakespeare to Alexa. How big is the connected vehicle audience? It's not that big, is it?
Well, here it says it's 14%. I'd say that people don't really understand what a connected car is. I have Apple Play. It's a connected car. And I have to plug a cord into my phone to have it read that. So because we say cord, Bluetooth, etc., I'd say there is a blurred line because people don't really understand the full concept, even though we describe it. It's just, I think there's a blurred line there. I think it's probably a little more, and certainly anybody with a new vehicle has a connected car is as ubiquitous now in a new vehicle as the rear view camera.
So far, both of you are, and I might have a slightly different opinion. Both of you are, I think, leaning toward lack of technical ease and lack of uniformity, the way you might have with we know what a Pandora does, right? We know what Spotify does, and you get into Pandora and then you can dial up your favorite artist. You don't have to worry about finding the title and which episode you're on and all that. Right. But so I get that. And that seems fair. But I'm also wondering if there are problems in the variety of subject matter choices that are available. And I offer you this slide, which once again shows overall podcast year-over-year usage growth. If you look at the the bar on the far left, more people are using podcasts more lately than less. But when you kind of isolate the growth, it really is that core constituency that we've seen for years now. It's guys and it's millennials. And we're not seeing a lot of audience growth outside of that very robust space.
Well, I have a theory about talk versus music and generations. If you look at the way radio always was, the sweet spot for music is 18 to 24 or 16 to 24. It's when you jump into music and find your sound. And I know for myself, I did not start listening to anything resembling talk or news or anything else until I had kids and was moving forward in my life. I had a career, I had a mortgage. Suddenly, the economy was important to me. I wanted to listen to that. There was entertainment I wanted to hear about, the movies, whatever. And so that sort of explains why it's peaking at millennial. In terms of male and female, I think finding the podcast. There are 2.4 million podcasts. I mean, you can do a podcast about my notebook or, where to get this cup,
I gotta listen to that.
You can listen to that if you want to. There's so much content out there. I think it's a matter of finding it. There's nothing there that makes it easy to touch your interest. And, there are plenty of podcasts out there for women. Women have always listened to talk in general, less than men do. But I think it's finding them, grabbing them. You can say that, but then TV talk has always been female focused. So it's just a matter of helping them find.
And I guess, Lee, it's the difference between a soap opera that you can tune in for an ongoing, continuing story that never ends and kind of a special one-off series that has a finite beginning and end, and you're on to the next thing.
Right. And I think before we were looking at principally it's millennial guys who are more adept at finding that habitual long-term podcast. It's about sports. It's a regular thing that's always there, as opposed to some of us who find more
Dan Rossello
podcasts. And we listen through them, the 8 or 10 episodes, and Okay, now what? and the apps are still sort of, I get pushback when I say it's the Wild West, but they're still not fully formed with uniformly great recommendation engines to push you on to your next listening experience.
Right. And, and it's a matter of marketing too, finding them, helping people find what interests them, making that connection. It's one of the reasons we do this research, so that we know people's interests, where they are, where to find them.
I think because we try to limit the amount of time we dedicate to any one of these New Voodoo Lives, because we want this to be 15 minutes that you don't want back. We have a whole treasure trove of data that gets into subject matter, how happy folks are, what's the most popular. So I wonder if I get you guys back for another 10, 15 minutes. We do it roughly the same time in a week or so. I'll get all the data together.
We'd love that. And again, Mike, there is so much there in terms of, you'll be surprised at the things women like more than men, or the things everybody likes. It surprised me in some ways, but then anecdotally, the things I've heard, especially from young women, makes perfect sense. And I think there's great opportunity for podcasters in terms of content.
And you don't hide from prospects and customers, right? You're very readily accessible. CG@newvoodoo.com. You'll talk to anyone about this.
Anybody.
Yeah. As will Lee, and as will I. It's our first names at newvoodoo.com. We'd love to hear from you. And we can't wait to see you back this time next week for part 2, where we'll deep dive into podcast subject matter. See you then.
As of December 2022, there were nearly 2.4 million podcast titles and almost 60 million total episodes hosted by Apple Podcasts. The average podcast, however, gets only 27 listeners per episode. For anyone trying to monetize, that's like a tree falling in the woods that nobody hears. But New Voodoo helps podcasters cut through the jungle with research and marketing. We help find the right listeners and grow the audience fast. Learn more about podcast discovery. Contact Tell Me More at newvoodoo.com.